all know that internship development is critical to our interns. I always say that you can teach the curriculum of Project Search anywhere, but you can't do the internship part without a host business. So first of all, hats off to all our South Carolina host businesses for providing a learning platform for us to have and house those internships. So we're going to kind of be delving deep for the next 2 hours into what is important when you're developing those internships and who can do it. All of us can do it. But probably the people that are doing it upfront, close and personal are the instructors and the skills trainers. So how can we support them? And if you're one of those people on the line, how can we support you to develop the best possible internships that you can? So here's what we're going to talk about over the next 2 hours. We're going to talk about competency. So be thinking about that word for a minute, because that's going to be a big one as we think through internships. We're going to be talking about the Department of Labor. We get a lot of questions about why can you have unpaid internships? So we're going to be reviewing those 7 factors of unpaid internships. We're going to be looking at model fidelity. We're going to be looking at who does what in internship development. We're going to be looking at a job analysis and how is that critical and central to internship development. We're going to be looking at a tool called the Skills Training Matrix. And then we're going to be at the very end talking about what happens when somebody tells you no, that, geez, that's really nice that you want an internship, but we're not interested. What can you do to help them say yes? So those are kind of the 5 areas that we're going to talk about. So we're going to start with competency, and we really need, this is where we need some group participation. So think about a time when someone made you feel like you couldn't do something. And I want you to share that with the group if you are willing, and share how you overcame it, or how did you develop competencies to overcome it? And then knowing that Project Search is about gaining competency. So does anybody want to share with the group about a time when someone made you feel like you couldn't do something that you were excited about doing? Come on, somebody has to have had and that kind of experience.
I was going to say, this is Anjanita. I was going to say, for me, my experience now is with being computer literate, as in terms of trying to convert paper forms to electronic forms and Googling, trying to figure out, because like today, it took me like an hour and a half to figure out how to do something in Excel. So that, I would say that for me.
And how did you feel when you were spending that hour and a half? Were you excited? Were you frustrated? Were you?
At first I was frustrated, like I should know this. And then I was like, well, you know what? I really don't do a lot of things with computers, but I can say during this time, I've become more computer literate. Because at first I was like, oh, I'm old school. I don't need to know how to do all this. And now it's forcing me to learn how to do something different.
Okay. And that makes you feel good, right?
It does. Once I figure out how to do it, then I feel like, oh, I got this.
All right. So remember that feeling that Antonita just said, I got this. Remember that. Anybody else could share about a time when somebody made you feel like you couldn't do something, or you made yourself feel like you couldn't do something? All right, I can't even see faces. I'm going to make you guys all turn on your cameras.
Okay, this is Lavita Green. I'll share. I do this a lot with myself. When you said that you've done to yourself, I identify. I'm my worst critic, and a lot of times it's a task that I kind of talk myself out of, based on, you know, if I don't feel like, if it's a group of people and I feel like they should be encouraging me to do it, and then they don't, then I take that as they don't think I can do it. And then I feed into it, I don't think I can do it. So then you start doing the task. It either completely defeats you, where you just say, okay, I'm not gonna do it, or it challenges you. And you try to overdo it to show other people that you can. So, I mean, it's just twofold. Sometimes if you feel like people around you don't believe in you and you can't do it, then sometimes that'll take over, and you won't do it. But if you challenge yourself, it's like an internal kind of thing that might wake up in you that you say, you know what, I'm gonna prove to you I can do it.
Great. Yeah, you're right. That self-talk can be really either helpful or destructive. Anybody else?
I've done that kind of, not necessarily with me. There is a lot of times with me, but most recently is with my students. A person who is one of the higher ups here at Walmart came and asked me to stay with one of my students 24/7 because she needed someone with her. And that made me feel like, I wasn't doing my job because I wasn't preparing her to be independent. And I stayed with her for a couple of days, but she is the most sought after person in the store now. Everybody wants her working. She does exactly what she's supposed to do. She just had to get used to it. And then they have to be welcoming enough to understand that even people with disabilities can do just as good a job, if not better, than others. So that made me feel mad, actually.
Okay. So you went through a whole bunch of emotions when that happened.
Right.
But
and at the same time, I want to stay here, so I have to abide by everybody's rules.
Right. We kind of have to play that game, but now you're really proud because she's being so successful, it sounds like.
She's doing a great job.
And the first person that talked, I think it was Anjanita, I think somebody, now that she's really proud of herself because she's more, has more competency in terms of Excel and technology. And think about the last, 9 months, we've all become more adept at technology because we've had to. So sometimes we gain competency because we have to, and sometimes we gain competencies because we want to, or other people are encouraging us. And just think about all those emotions that we just talked about when we learn something new. And those are all the same emotions that our interns go through. Sometimes I think that we don't give them enough credit for having the same emotions we do, but they get just as defeated or just as excited or just as proud as they gain skills that anybody else does. So keep that in mind as we're encouraging them and layering on new tasks and skills, because it's all about gaining those competencies and skills to get the job of competitive employment at the very end. All right, so we're going to think about model fidelity. And if you are really familiar with Project Search, does anybody know how many model fidelity components we have?
8. Wasn't there 8?
Anybody? All right, we have 6.
6.
Project Search has 6 model fidelity components, but number 5 is so important that the whole thing about internships is so important that it has its own model fidelity component. And number 5 says the program leads to acquisition of competitive skills. So actually yesterday we just created this fun little word web to think about internships. So if we think about, we want them to have progress, we want them to learn soft skills, we want them to learn competitive skills, we want them to learn about productivity and quality and safety. We want the skills to be transferable and marketable. We want to layer on new skills. We want good outcomes. We want quality. We want them to get careers. We want to use VocaFit as we are looking at different possible internship areas. So model fidelity component 5 says that the program leads to acquisition of competitive skills. And if we break that down further, one of the documents that I sent Joy to kind of pass out to everybody goes a little bit more in depth about model fidelity 5. And so the other thing, so I saw Anne on this webinar or this meeting earlier. And so she's a supervisor. And one of the things we say about internship development is that the on-site team, who is the instructor and the skills trainers, managers and mentors, that on-site team needs additional time to develop internships. So they're going to identify core skills. Core skills are basic skills. Core skills are the skills that you can say right off the top of your head is immersed in a job. So identify those core skills that can be taught in the host business, develop the internships, and design adaptations and accommodations. So we always need to be thinking that our team needs additional time to get these things done because they're typically done in the summer or after the students leave, because we're spending all of our other time with the interns. And that internship development is an ongoing process and it's individualized. So if there's one person, so let's go back to Karen for a minute. Karen was talking about Walmart. So if Karen needs something special for a specific intern, we might develop an internship that we might never use again because that one intern needed it. So internship doesn't stop. If you have 6 kids and you have 6 internships, you might say, well, good, I'm done, right? That's all I need. Well, Karen's shaking her head because that's not all you need. I always like to say I want a couple extra internships in my back pocket because I might need them for Rhonda or Karen or whoever that has a specific need. So that's also important that you're always thinking about kind of the next skill and the next skill and where am I going to teach that? Where can that internship be? Maybe I never had an internship. You probably do, Karen, but let's say in the back, bringing out stock. You probably do, but, or maybe you've never unloaded a truck and now you're going to teach students to unload a truck. So always thinking about layering on more and developing new opportunities. So interns are in the departments learning competitive, marketable, transferable skills. They're going to interview before their internship. They're going to participate in the internships 20 to 25 hours a week, and they're going to learn as many skills as possible, and we're going to layer on more skills. So those are just some basics. We should all know that, but those are some basics. We should always be assessing their progress on skill acquisition, quality, and productivity. We should be using the VocaFit tool. We learned about that last month. And interns are not volunteers. And you're thinking, well, what's so important about that? There's a lot of importance about not using that word volunteer, especially if you're in a hospital situation. Because if you get lumped in with the volunteers, and we've seen that during the pandemic, then oftentimes they'll think of you as a volunteer and you won't be able to maybe be certain places or learn certain things. And an internship is very different than a volunteer experience because we are learning skills toward employment. So here's a little bit about the Department of Labor. And it's interesting. Last week, I was working with a potential national chain to start project search program. And they keep saying that they want to pay the students. They want to pay the students. And in my head, that just creates lots of philosophical chaos. And so they're saying, well, how can I get around that? And I said, the Fair Labor Standards Act has rules around unpaid internships. So let's think about what those 7 kind of rules are. And that way, if Walmart or your hospital or wherever wants to know why we're not paying the students, here's why. So 7 court identified reasons, then things that we as project search programs need to follow so that we're in line with unpaid internships. So number 1 is the extent to which the intern and the employer together understand that there's no expectation of compensation. So I go into it full well knowing that this is a learning experience. It's part of my high school program, and I am not going to get paid. So we tell students that, we tell families that right from the get-go so that they totally understand that. Number 2, the extent to which the internship provides training that is like their educational environment. Now, does it look like school? No, but they are in school during a school day. We are working from their IEP goals, their transition goals. They do have a high school special education instructor. So there are certain things that that follow their high school education program. Number 3, the extent to which the internship is tied to their formal program by integrated coursework. So when we say integrated coursework, we want it to be transition based. We want it to be toward the outcome of employment, those specialized indicators that special education works toward, and all of that kind of thing. All right, 4, to which the internship accommodates the academic commitments by flowing through an academic calendar. So we all know that Project Search typically starts the first day of school and ends the last day of school, and we follow that local school's calendar. Number 5 talks about the internship's duration and that it provides the intern with learning. Yes, we're going to have them learn skills that are beneficial to them and lead toward employment. Number 6 is really important because we can get kind of into a pickle here. So, and not because of what we do, but sometimes what the host business might ask of us. So the extent to which the intern work complements rather than displaces the work of paid employees and provides significant educational benefits to the intern. So if ever a manager says to you as the instructor, the skills trainer, the supervisor, well, you know, Rhonda's going to be out for a couple weeks, and it would just be great if you could just do her job for you, because do her job for her because you've gained so many skills. That's a big timeout. No, we can't do that. Yes, I could complement her work. I could learn some of the skills that she's doing. I could maybe learn many of those tasks, but you can't replace or displace a worker by doing an unpaid internship. If they really want you to do someone's job, then they should be hiring you. And then lastly, the extent to which the intern and employment or the employer understand that there is no entitlement of a paid job at the end of the internship. So we don't want anybody to think, okay, I did my 3 internships, now you're going to hire me, right? No, that is never the expectation, that the host business hires all the interns. So those are those 7 court identified factors. We have some documents on those if you want. It might have been even one of the ones I sent to Joy. So those are important for you to know and to follow. Any questions about those? Nope. Okay. All right. So back to model fidelity. So one of the other things is that we use VocaFit. We talked about that last time because it's an assessment that was created just for Project Search. I'm not going to go into it a whole lot because we talked about that last month, but it can look at strengths and emerging skills, which we're going to talk about in a minute, as well as challenges that the intern has. And it looks at that on a graph that you've probably seen before. There's a couple of South Carolina teachers, including George McClear, who just do a fabulous job with VocaFit. So if you are at all intimidated in terms of using it, and you want another instructor to help you, I would certainly reach out to George. He uses it all the time for all kinds of things like progress monitoring, and he's a superstar. You want to facilitate the best internship match that prepares your intern for competitive employment, and to identify just right challenges. So the just right challenges is a way to stretch your interns to learn more. All right. You can tell that these are new pictures because of the lovely masks. So we're going to move on to talking about roles and responsibilities. Kind of, when we think about it, who does what during the internships? This is different than that roles and responsibilities document that you might have seen in another training, because this is just specific to internships. So in this picture, here's our instructor. Here's 2 of our interns. This is actually in the emergency room at Cincinnati Children's, and here's their supervisor. So this is a really good kind of picture, not just a picture, but sort of an image, if you will, in your head of hopefully what happens a lot is that the instructor maybe is listening to directions from the supervisor so that she can reinforce those things later. And these young men actually are now employees. They were part of a project search program, but you can tell that they're hopefully listening to their supervisor in terms of what she's telling them. And then the instructor can later reinforce that or reteach it or remind these young men of kind of what's coming next from the employers, from their boss's expectations. So when we think of internships, these are the people that really have the most influence over internships: the instructor, the skills trainers, the managers, mentors, the business liaison, and of course, the interns. So this is Mitch Morgan. If any of you have ever met him before, he's wonderful. He's from Cincinnati, and he's kind of our national business liaison from Fifth Third. So what do we want the host business liaison to do? We want them to market the program internally. So within the host business, to talk about project search, to get people excited about it, so that we can develop new internships, so that we can change the image and persona of people with disabilities, so that people know that they can work competitively. We want them to seek departments to host internship sites. We want them to identify new and seasoned possible opportunities for new internship sites. We want them to give information about project search. So if somebody says, what's that project search thing that you're doing? Then he or she can talk a little bit about project search, why it's so important, why their company is invested, etc. So you need to arm them with information. If you think they're a new business liaison, or maybe they aren't as supportive as you wish they were, or maybe they're just new to the organization overall, then that's your job to give them that information so that they have it at the ready. One of our sites in Michigan, throughout the organization, are bulletin boards. And she has gotten permission, the instructor has gotten permission to put, not big, like little 5x8 pieces of information about project search throughout the host business. So that way a manager, a mentor always has access to a little bit of information about project search. So think about the ways that you can help your host business liaison do these kinds of things. And then you also want your host business to introduce you to other key departments where you might not already be. So maybe a new department that you want to access, human resources, training, equity and inclusion, all of those, employee health, as many departments as you can think of that you might want an intro, maybe just to give them an information about project search, but ask that host business liaison to set those meetings up for you. All right, managers and mentors, those are key to project search. First of all, you want them to volunteer. You don't want somebody to be voluntold if at all possible. You want them to feel like they had a choice in offering an internship. You want them to help you identify the tasks, because you don't know what those basic tasks are at first. If you're new to project search, it's all new. But if you're older to project search, you could probably identify some of those tasks yourself. But when you're new, you need those managers and mentors to tell you what that department does, what are the core skills that a new employee needs to learn, etc. They need to allow you to come in and observe. We're going to talk about standing in the circle in a little bit, but you need access to that department so that you can watch the work and learn the work, because you're going to be more effective as an instructor and a skill trainer when you understand that, the flow of the work, why the work's being done, where it comes from, where it goes from here, etc. You want to negotiate an internship description between the manager and the mentor and the skills trainer and the instructor. So you want to talk back and forth about what that task list or what that job list is going to look like for your intern. So you want them to be helpful in negotiating that internship description. And we're going to talk a lot about that coming up, that internship description and what it's going to entail. You want that manager to choose a mentor. So typically a manager raises their hand and says, yes, we'll support a student. And then they turn it over to a mentor, somebody that's a lead staff member, maybe somebody that's been there a long time, maybe somebody that has had experience training other new people. So you really need that peer mentor as your point of contact. You want them to be willing to interview the intern. In the resource guide, there's some sample questions, but you want that intern to go through a somewhat formal interview so that they get that experience, and also so that the manager has the opportunity to either say yay or nay to an intern. And then lastly, you want them to provide natural supports. So you want them to invite that student to have lunch with the department, attend a staff meeting, attend another activity, maybe that the department is involved with. Like maybe, I know these things aren't happening now because of the pandemic, but maybe a buddy walk or a walk for fundraising or a holiday party or something like that. You want your interns to be able to attend those kind of things and have their mentor support them, or another employee to support them during those things. Think about the first time you ever went to a staff meeting at your new job. Did you feel lost? I did. Am I supposed to talk? Am I not supposed to talk? Am I supposed to take notes? So think about, all of those first time activities and how do we support our interns during those things? All right, now kind of the instructor and skills trainer role in developing internships. We want you to go in and observe the department work. And again, that might be in the summer. It might be before the program starts, like early in the morning, or maybe after the interns leave at the end of the day. So somehow you need to get in those departments and watch the work. Just watch people doing those tasks so that you can understand kind of how it all flows. What is the workflow? You want to identify those core skills or essential functions that the interns need to learn. And then you can start to think about, what's this internship description and what kind of accommodations might I need for some of our students? Are they going to need a picture checklist? Can they read? Can they read a task list? Do they need some kind of reminders? When Karen said earlier, they wanted me there 24/7. Are they going to need your full support, your partial support? You want to prepare them for that interview. You want to assess them to measure their skills gain, and you want to layer new skills as the intern masters the basic skills. So you've got a lot of work to do to develop those internships, and nobody is saying that this isn't a big deal, because it is. Timing out and laying out those internship tasks are one of the most important things that we can do in Project Search. And then what do we want the intern to do? We want them to tell us what they're interested in, as well as be open to new possibilities. So do they want to work with patients or not? Do they want to work with customers or not? Are they excited more about working with things or working with people? So all of those things we want their input on, because we all like our jobs better when we're happy with our job. Even though we might be stressed, I still like the work. So I'm going to keep working when I'm excited about the work we're doing. We want them to learn all the tasks. We want them to reach productivity levels and quality standards and safety standards. Those are very important. We want the interns to follow business policies and procedures in terms of clocking in and out, or wearing the right clothes, or washing their hands, or having good hygiene, whatever it happens to be, we want them to follow the business policies and procedures, which means we have to teach those things. We want the interns to contact the department for any absences. We don't want you to do that. We want the intern to do that. We want the intern to accept constructive feedback and then act on that feedback. We want them to update their resume. I was on a Michigan steering committee team this morning, and they update their resumes every Thursday. I went, wow, that's a lot. Every Thursday morning, they get in and update their profile in their host business. I thought that was really interesting because that way they can check for openings. So anyway, and then accepting that challenge. So how can I do more? Or how can I learn another skill? Or how can I improve my productivity or my quality? And that accepting the constructive feedback and then working toward the next step is hard for all of us, not just our interns. All right, so moving along. Now we're going to think about the job analysis. So how do we develop that whole task list and what's it going to look like? And we're going to start referring to a form that I sent out. So when we think about creating that job analysis, we need to know first and foremost, and it's interesting, I keep going back to Karen's comment about they wanted a skills trainer with this young person 24/7. So we really need to communicate about how much on-site support we are able to provide the intern. So in most project search programs, there's 2 staff there, right? An instructor and a skills trainer for however many students you have. If you have 6, if you have 8, if you have 9 students, you've got 2 staff. Well, how does that relate to 24/7 when Karen said they wanted somebody with this person 24/7? It doesn't really relate well, because then what happens to the rest of the students? So we need to communicate the fact that we don't have one-on-one support, nor do we want to have one-on-one support, because we want those interns to become independent. Now, we will provide lots of communication. And we hope to get communication from the internship site, but we can't, it's very hard to do 24/7 support day in and day out. I think Karen said she was with them 3 days, which makes sense, and then can kind of back off. What are the specifications of that internship? So what are all the little details? Like where are they? How far are they from the classroom? Are there any safety concerns? Are there any things that the interns need to do before they can start? Like maybe get steel-toed shoes or have goggles or whatever. We're going to stand in the circle, which means we're going to do intense observation of that department. We're going to think about quality, productivity, and safety. Those are really, really important. If I can clean a table, but it takes me 30 minutes, well, I'm not going to be very productive. And probably the cafeteria wouldn't hire me because I might be really, really good at it, but I'm really, really slow. So they don't need somebody with that low level of productivity. We're going to identify the task areas. We're going to talk about book fit. We're going to talk about, again, the Just Right challenge and skill layering. Okay, so that internship analysis. So here's, this is almost like a storage unit, if you will, of equipment at one of our local project search hospitals. So what I love about this picture is, first of all, you can just tell there's a ton to organize, a ton to clean. And up here, so kind of almost looks like a wallpaper border, but that's a cue to tell any worker not to put anything above that line. So at the end of the day, as I'm putting things away or as I'm cleaning, that's a little sign to me without saying anything And you can see these things right here are almost to the line. So those are great little work reminders or natural cues in the environment that help our students as well as anybody else kind of follow the flow of the work. The picture that I just showed you in the last slide is actually in the very same room. This room is probably, it was like 8 by 8. So it's fairly small room, but just packed with equipment. And yet it was so organized. When you walk in, you can see things, they're lumped together, and you really can find what you need. It was a really interesting internship, stocking these equipment rooms and then making sure everything's clean and ready to go and it's in its place. All right, so first thing you want to do when you're looking at an internship and kind of laying it out is to talk to the department leadership. Is that the manager, the supervisor? So what's the most important thing that happens in this department? What's the goal of this department? What do they exist for? And then, so what's kind of the most important piece of your work? So ask them. Most people like to talk about their jobs. The managers are gonna like these kind of questions. And then kind of, is there anything that's coming up in the future? And you want to talk about the near future, because right now with the pandemic, you know, things might look different. So what's the biggest thing on people's mind right now? Anybody? Or at least on my mind. Jennifer, you're smiling. What is some of the biggest things that, especially if you're at a hospital, what are you thinking
Cleanliness,
about? What?
cleaning and cleanliness.
Cleaning and cleanliness?
Yeah.
What else are we worried about right now or excited about?
The vaccine.
Yes. Yes, Sarah, we are thinking about, where am I in line, right? Am I next? Am I in the next month? When am I going to get my vaccine? That's what people, this morning, Erin, my boss, got her vaccine. I was part of a Pfizer study, so I'm pretty sure I've already had it, but I'm unblinding from the study to find out. So, you know, when we talk about future trends, right now in the very near future, hospitals are worried about, how am I going to vaccinate my 1,000 staff, my 2,000 staff, however many staff I have, and how do I get through them? And then how are all the different departments supporting that effort? Does this department of equipment support that event? Maybe not. I don't see like vials or things, but if it all comes from materials management, then yes, somehow they're supporting that effort, because they're probably getting supplies in to get those vaccines and get them out. When I think about Karen at Walmart, like, do you guys have a clinic? Some Walmarts have little health clinics that they're giving the vaccine. So thinking about those future trends is really, really important, because you might go look at a department today, but then knowing that it's going to change in the next few weeks or months because of the pandemic or because of something else, maybe. Then the other thing you want to think about is, what's transferable to other industry sectors? What skills can I have a student learn here that would transfer to another kind of a job in the community? So if I think about this room that I described a little bit, it's 8 by 8, it's got a whole bunch of equipment in it. What if there was no jobs at this hospital, but this was a really great internship? Where might it relate to in terms of another job in the community? Anybody? You guys are really quiet. So first of all, you're going to learn cleaning. So I think about like home health equipment, maybe. That's super related because it's health equipment. But even if I'm just cleaning any kind of equipment and then getting it ready to be shipped out, so refurbishing equipment, maybe technology that's getting shipped out, just working at a big box store, that's, I'm getting this ready, I'm moving it out into the store, and then it'll hopefully be sold and move on. So any kind of materials management equipment, cleanliness, equipment moving in and out is very, very transferable to lots of other jobs. You might ask the managers or mentors while you're trying to look at this kind of a department, what are support roles? So what are those entry level jobs? Because those are where your students are going to come in, is at the entry level, you know, pay grade band 2, 3, or 4, or whatever. Can I look at those job descriptions? Can I see what those entry level workers do? That'll give you some more ideas for layering skills, productivity, quality, etc. And then always asking those managers and mentors, what skills should my student learn? Because our end goal is employment. So hopefully if those managers understand what your goal is, our goal is competitive employment, then they can say, well, then Jennifer needs to learn this, this, and this, because she's not going to get a job in this area if she doesn't know this, this, and this. So you really want to pay attention when you ask that question. What are the skills that the intern needs that will lead to employment? All right, so this is that form I was trying to be able to show you. So you were sent a form called the Internship Job Analysis, so that you can use this very same form if you're identifying internship skills or if you're identifying a job. We wanted to make it really easy for teams, no matter if you're looking at an internship or if you're looking at a potential job. So same form, so that as you get used to using this form, you can use it over and over again and you don't have to switch forms. So we're going to kind of walk through this form together. So first of all, just what's the department? What's the name of it? Materials management, home health aides. For Karen, it might be, I don't know what all the departments at Walmart are called, but maybe it's warehouse or whatever it happens to be, dispatch, sales clerk. So what's the name of the department? Who's the manager? This should really say skills trainer. I just noticed that. So who's the skills trainer, or who's the instructor that's filling out this form? When's the date? I know that seems so silly, but that's going to be important, because if it's been a year since you did this job analysis, you might want to update it. And then the address, maybe you don't need that if you know, but you haven't even put your home site in. So you might want to say, instead of address, like what's our site? Is it the, I don't know, the Walmart in I know all the Walmarts have numbers, but maybe the town. And then who's the contact number for that manager? How am I going to get a hold of him if I need to? And then kind of how many coworkers are there? Is this a really big department? Is it a small department? Are there 20 people in the department? Are there 50? Are there only 2? And then what's the name, the phone number, the details for the manager and mentor, and if there's any key colleagues. Sometimes there's a mentor, but maybe they're not available very often, and you end up going to another person in the department. You might want to note that person. All right, and then it gets into some specifications that your intern might need. So where do you report each day? Do they have to clock in and out? So you might put that right there, that they have to clock in and out before they enter the department. Right now, I don't know about you guys, but for Cincinnati Children's, we have to answer a series of questions every morning on the computer before we can start our job. And it's all about COVID, right? But it's the same questions every day, so it's super easy. You know, do you have a cough? Do you have shortness of breath? So that is built into every single morning. Before I can even start work, I have to do that. What do the interns have to wear? Do they have to wear a uniform? Do they have to have steel-toed shoes? Do they have to have, what do they have to do? Do they have to be clean shaven? You know, all of those kind of things. What's their schedule? Whoops, sorry. What's their schedule? Do they stay there for lunch? Do they go to lunch with their interns, or are they somewhere else? And then are there any physical requirements? Do they have to lift? Do they have to carry anything heavy? Do they have to bend or stoop? And then is there training available in that department? Not through Project Search, but through that department. Do they have to learn CPR? Do they have to learn basic life support? And if so, is there training available, or are you going to have to teach that? So that's going to be really important, because if you have to teach it, that you're going to have to take the training first. It's not good or bad. It's just something you need to know. All right. So I've mentioned standing in the circle a couple times. So standing in the circle is a component of lean manufacturing, lean healthcare. And you've probably heard me talk about lean before, but lean actually is an old concept. It started in the 50s after World War II, where a guy named Alfred Deming went from the United States to Toyota and said, I've got a really great way to look at manufacturing. And it's kind of a way that looks at the workflow and process and makes it as efficient as possible. And some people think that lean means that you're getting rid of staff. You're not. You're really streamlining the process of the work, not necessarily of the workers, the work itself. So when you go in, standing in the circle means I'm going to stand and watch at a kind of a 360 degrees of what's going on in that department. How many workers are they? What are they doing? How fast are they working? Does there seem to be like a productivity? What are they doing to maintain quality? Who's doing what? Do they move around? Do they stay still? All of those things. Are there things done at a certain time? I can remember a couple of years ago, I was in New Hampshire developing an internship in pharmacy, and certain things happened at certain times. At 9 o'clock, they got their deliveries. Things were supposed to be put away and off the shelves or on the shelves by 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, all the boxes needed to be taken down to the dumpster and recycled. So what it was that schedule? And then you want to think about identifying what skills can be learned by your interns and if there's any unmet needs. So when I was in that pharmacy in New Hampshire, the manager said, I wish our staff didn't have to take the boxes down. It takes them away from their job. Great, that was an unmet need. Then our interns could do that. And then that gave them another skill to learn, because then they could learn to run that box crusher. So they can take the boxes down, they can learn to operate that recycling box crusher. So that met an unmet need for that department, that they didn't want to do that. Now the intern can do that. You also want to look at what's working and what doesn't seem to be working. Is there something that seems to be getting in the way of everybody doing their job? Is there something that just doesn't seem as efficient as it could be? So, and as you're observing, you want to be thinking about questions you can ask of the manager and mentor when you're finished observing. So you don't need to ask like 50 questions as you go. So kind of take a pad of paper with you, or your laptop or your iPad or your phone, and write down all those questions that you have while you're doing that observation, and then go and get all your questions answered afterward. So now we're back to our form, and you can have this form with you or you can fill it out later. So what are some of the general requirements in terms of speed? Do they have to make lots of decisions? Because if they do, we want to take some of the judgment out of it and put in a process so that they make the right choices. Do they have to solve problems? And if so, what are some of those problems? What's the requirement for accuracy? And when we say that, thinking about some of our internships. So when I think about accuracy in central sterile processing, and I'm looking at Jennifer Quinn right now. So Jennifer, if you had surgery tomorrow, what's the accuracy that you would want somebody to put together your tray? It'd be 100% accuracy if somebody's putting your tray together, right?
Yes.
because that's it. So, but if Karen, so you're still on the line, if somebody puts a medium size shirt in a small size shirt pile, okay, no one's going to die if they pick up a medium instead of a small size shirt. I'm not saying we want it to happen, but the likelihood of a medium size shirt in a small size shirt pile and getting fired, hopefully it's not that big a deal. But again, going back to Jennifer Quinn, if she's having surgery tomorrow and her tray isn't perfect, that's a big deal. That could be a matter of life and death. Whereas small, medium shirt, okay, I'll figure it out and I'll get the right shirt for the right person eventually. So just thinking about that in terms of accuracy and how what the tolerance for error is really, really important. So thinking about all of these things, speed, judgment, problem solving, and accuracy. And then what's the rate? How fast are people working? Does the work fluctuate? Meaning, is there more work in the morning and less work in the afternoon? Or is it just steady? Steady as she goes, just keeps on going. Or is the pace really slow? We have an internship at Cincinnati Children's called the Scheduling Center. And every clinic gets, if you're attending a clinic, you get a letter 15 days ahead of time. There's a lot more work to do on Mondays and Tuesdays because some of those 15 days hit over the weekend. And by Friday, they're all caught up. And so by Friday, the work rate's really slow. But if I went and observed on a Monday, I would think it's always fast. So you need to ask some questions about the work and does it change over time? We have a internship at Cincinnati Children's in the sleep center. So it's really busy on Mondays and Tuesdays, recovering from the weekend, cleaning equipment, changing out beds. And it's pretty busy on Friday, getting ready for the new people that are coming in on the weekend for sleep studies. Tuesday and Wednesday, it's really slow. So now what are the interns going to do while it's really slow? So you just have to kind of think about all of those work rate items as you're filling out this form and as you're developing your task list. So if I was lucky enough, I could combine the scheduling center and the sleep center because the work would fluctuate on different days. And on Fridays, I could go and help them get ready for the sleep center clients. And on beginning of the week, I could be spending more time in the scheduling center. So think about that. You might have to combine areas as well. And then what about the work routines? Is it really organized? Like I only do my part and I never help anybody else? Or are there frequent changes? And am I expected to go to different sections of the department and help everyone? Is there a variety of tasks? How is that work organized? And then the environment itself. Is there lots of stimulation or is it really quiet and not much stimulation at all? That's really important for some of our students that can't handle lots of stimulation. Is it fast paced? Is it kind of that steady and calm? Am I working with a team or am I working by myself? Some students like that, some students don't. Is it a really large area or is it a small defined area? Those pictures I showed you a few minutes ago, it's a really small defined area. The pictures made it look big. It's really not that big of a room. Are some areas off limits, like you never go there, or you can't walk behind the yellow line, or you can only walk behind the yellow line if you have your goggles on. So, what's the layout? What's allowable? What's not? Do you need an access code to get in? And if so, are your students going to be able to learn that access code? Does it change all the time? Sometimes if places are really secure, they'll change that access code every week. Or can my badge let me in all the time? So all these things to think about. There's a lot of information, but this form will help you just kind of keep on track. I just realized it's 3. We'll get through a couple more slides and then maybe we can take like a 5-minute break. All right, so how do I apply this whole standing in the circle thing that we just talked about while I'm completing this form. So standing in the circle again is a fine tuning of your awareness skills. So if I look at that slide a minute ago, look at all these things I have to pay attention to, and that standing in the circle task will help me think through those, or at least help me think of questions to ask. You also have to step back from assumptions. So sometimes we think we know best or we know everything because I've been there for 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years. But standing in the circle forces you to be more open because you're not talking, you're not asking questions yet, you're just observing. It's actually more difficult if you're familiar with it because you think you know what's coming. So you have to almost pretend that I'm a brand new employee or I'm a brand new person. So just be open to new ways of thinking. And again, you're only seeing, if you're only going to do standing in the circle one time, you're just getting a snapshot. So you might say, hey, can I come on a Monday and can I come on a Friday? Or can I come at the beginning of the shift and can I come at the end of the shift? So see if you can come more than once. You might not have the time, and I understand that completely. But over time, you're going to gain a new perspective anyway, as you're in there doing skills training or being the instructor with that student. But it's most beneficial if you can be there for a couple different times of the day or a couple different times during the week. All right, so here we're back to that form. And now you're ready to fill in the tasks. So now you're going to say, okay, you're going to clean equipment, you're going to receive it back, you're going to look at the computer order and get each computer order ready to go with the new equipment that's going out. So whatever, however many tasks you might have. So maybe number one is receive equipment back from departments. Now, what does that mean? How many departments might that be? How long does that last? Whatever. What's the quality standard? The quality standard is, I don't know. Do you have to sign off on it? Is there paperwork that comes with it? How many am I expected to do maybe in an hour or during my 4-hour shift in project search? Is there any safety that goes with it? Maybe if it's heavy that I'm lifting. We're going to talk about frequency in a little bit. And then what skills might I think about layering on after time? Maybe week 1 and week 2, I'm only going to do the first 3 tasks, and then I'm going to layer on more tasks as time goes on during my internship. So kind of remember why I have 10 weeks during the internship. Maybe even think about what's going to happen the first 3 weeks, in the middle 3 weeks, and the last 3 weeks. Can I layer some skills on during those times? All right, it is 3:06, and I have heard that we really shouldn't go past 50 minutes of content before we take a break. We've had about that. So why don't we take a 5-minute break? We'll come back about, I don't know, 3:12 or 3:13. That gives you time to maybe get water and go to the restroom, and we'll come back and talk about the difference between task and skills. So we talk about task list, but we also talk about the fact that our students need to learn skills. So a task is just a piece of the work that needs to be completed. But the skill is when I actually gain that ability to do it well. So I'm doing tasks, but hopefully I'm learning skills. We determine what tasks can be accomplished during the internships, and through mastering those tasks, our interns will develop skills, and then we'll build competency in each of those skill areas. So just a little bit of maybe semantics to think about as you think about pieces of work or tasks. The ability to do something well is a skill. All right, so back to this form, we're going to be identifying the tasks, giving a little bit of a description if we can do that, and then we're going to think about frequency. So how often does that task is it being done? So I talked about those boxes in the pharmacy, how frequent. Every day at 10 o'clock, they need to be taken down. And there might be 10 and there might be 50 boxes, just depending on that, how many boxes were delivered that day. And maybe over time, I would learn more about, maybe on Mondays, they get lots more than they do on Fridays. I don't know, but maybe over time, I would learn more about that frequency part. Frequency is different than productivity. Productivity is how quickly I should be able to do something. Frequency is how often it happens. That can be confusing. And it can be confusing to our interns as well. We talked about layering. So thinking about my 10 weeks, okay? Maybe week 1 and 2, I'm just going to teach a couple tasks. Maybe by week 3, I can layer on a couple more tasks and more and more. Layering can also mean learning to work faster, learning to build in more quality, maybe learning another way to do it. So it can be just a brand new task, or it can be getting better at the tasks that they're already doing. So you might even ask that manager, or when you're standing in the circle, can you determine what basic, what intermediate, and what advanced skills are? Or do you need to ask someone? I'm not sure I could, but I don't know. You might be able to figure that out on your own just through observation. If we're in a restaurant, and we've hopefully all been in restaurants, maybe not lately, but at some point we've been in restaurants. So that initial skill would be just cleaning and prepping tables, putting condiments back the way they should be, putting the salt and peppers where they should be, bussing the table, all of that sort of thing. And then maybe entering food into the computer might be an intermediate skill. Taking drink orders might be a higher level skill, and then delivering food might be, more of the top level skill. So we can all think about that layering in relation to a restaurant. Now think about it in terms of maybe your own job, or think about it in terms of your a department where you are right now. So just kind of think about that for a second. Anybody want to just share what's a basic skill, an intermediate, and a higher level skill for one of your internships? Karen, I might have to pick on you.
All right, so I do have some. I have some doing the basics, which is just putting things on the shelf. And then I have some who are doing a little bit more. They're top stocking, putting things on the shelf, and zoning. And then I have some going all the way to the back, picking, helping with the truck, and doing different things. So, and then I have one doing much lower, and she's folding clothes. She's doing the apparel and making sure things are in order by small, medium, and large. So I have all different kind of ranges.
Okay, good. So you've already in your head kind of know what's beginning, middle, and advanced, right?
Yes, ma'am. We just kind of add on as they learn. So the ones who learn a little faster, they've got more responsibilities and skills, and the ones who are some are still working on the beginning skills.
Okay, awesome. Wonderful. All right. So we always want to be thinking about that layering opportunity to learn more and more and more. And if we think way back to the beginning of this presentation, when we talked about Fair Labor Standards Act, they have to be learning more, or you're going to get worried about, are they just taking over, replacing someone's job? All right, so back to this form again. Here's where you can put in some layering over here. So when Karen talked a minute ago about zoning and going to the back and all those kind of things, she can put those in. Maybe in week 3, I might think about this for a certain person, but maybe somebody else, it might not be. We'll till week 6 or 7 or 8. All right, now we're going to think about Voc Fit for a minute. If you were on our last training last month, we talked about the Voc Fit assessment. And if you remember, there are 133 skills in the voc fit assessment, and they're broken up into these subscales. That's a hard word to say, subscales. So there's physical ones, there's self-determination, et cetera, et cetera. And here are some of the skills. To do this part of the form, you're almost going to need a list of the voc fit skills in front of you. Because even though I've worked with voc fit now for a couple of years, I don't know all the skills by heart. There's no way. So I'd have to have that paper next to me while I was thinking about which voc fit skills I'm going to work on. I would also want the manager's opinion. So for Karen, a lot of these physical abilities are going to be important. Can they walk quickly back to the break room or back to the back safely to get stock? Can they carry it out safely? Do they need to twist and bend to move like to a lower shelf to a higher shelf? Other departments might not be that physical. Do they have to handle stress? Almost every job these days is stressful. So thinking about these voc fit skills, this is important to include because we're going to do progress monitoring and measurable skills gain on these skills. We also want to think about those basic employability skills. voc fit has some of the employability skills embedded. So if I go back to these subscales, even if you just look at general, all of those are what I would call employability or soft skills: handling stress, accepting praise. Well, maybe not hygiene, following directions. Some of those are just general employability skills. And those are important, as we all know, for any job. So those would be important to always build in those employability skills. And then so a little bit, if you aren't familiar with voc fit, I would encourage you to watch. And if you didn't come to the training last month, I would encourage you to watch one of the voc fit videos in our video library. But as I said, it's a basic support assessment to aid our project search teams to help make good matches between interns and internships and employees or our graduates and jobs. And we're marrying skills that the person has the ability to do with the demands of the job. And that's kind of it in a nutshell. And again, there's 133 items that we are constantly assessing. And when you're thinking about the person's abilities, you're asking yourself of that intern, do they have high ability? Do they have some ability, or do they have low ability? And if you're thinking about the job, the demands of the internship or that particular department, is the task essential? Then it's a high demand. If the job is fairly relevant but non-essential, then there's some demand. If the task is irrelevant or it's not essential at all, then it's a low demand. So this is kind of how that voc fit assessment is scored. And again, you've got a great teacher. George McClear is just a master at using voc fit. So this is one of the reports. You can generate several reports. This is one of the reports that you can generate. So to match interns to internships, or graduates to jobs, or even interns to jobs as they're looking at employment. And most of you know what those green, yellow, and orange and red mean. So these are my strengths. These are my emerging skills that are just starting to develop. And these are needs that I still have that I'm not good at yet. So I probably was scored either a some or a low here. All right, we're going to talk a minute about boundary spanning. And this is kind of a new term for all of us. It might not be a new term for you, but it is for thinking about project search. But it's important because it helps us kind of go out of our bubble a little bit. So you want to find out, you want to go beyond your department and maybe even a little bit beyond your host business to see what else is out there. So this boundary spanning is a term that describes resources or supports or information that would be beneficial to your interns and maybe even to you, but it's outside your department or outside your organization. and they could be accessed through another partner organization or one of their networks. So it might be accessed through VR, or it might be accessed through your support organization, your support employment organization, or it might be accessed through the Chamber of Commerce or something else. So for instance, let's say that you want your interns to learn basic life support. And maybe for Karen, nobody at Walmart's going to teach basic life support, so she might need to go to the hospital. Vice versa, for somebody at one of our hospitals, they might not know anything about, I'm trying to think because hospitals are pretty awesome. Maybe for interviewing skills, she might choose to contact the department or the Chamber of Commerce to help with interviewing, because there's nobody at the hospital that really, needs or has the time to work with the interns on that. This last bullet, online training, certification, and courses. So think about maybe some certifications, again, maybe basic life support or CPR, first aid. And when I think about things like, if I know I keep going back to Karen, but maybe getting their certification in using a jack pallet or something, some kind of piece of equipment that's going to help them be more competitive, employable, because they've got these other certifications and courses. I hope that makes sense. The other thing that you want to find out in boundary spanning, do people have forms or checklists or things that I can use that I don't have to develop? So they might have a training matrix. They might have standard operating procedures. So I don't have to come up with it myself like a picture checklist. They might already have it. So find out from your departments, your hospital, or beyond your host business, what might be out there that I can access before I start creating things on my own so that I don't have to. I hope that makes sense. So boundary spanning, does the department already have a training matrix, a competency checklist, an SOP or a standard operating procedure? Because then that means you can start with what they already have and you don't have to waste time or spend time developing it. And all you have to do is modify it for your interns. And then this next part of the form talks about, do I need a certification, or do my students need a certification before they can begin work? Are there any safety things they need to do before they can begin work? And then additional information, kind of all those unwritten rules. Like, what did I find out when I did my observation that is important to this department, but maybe no, it's not written down anywhere? A good one is like some organizations really celebrate everybody's birthday. Well, if you don't know that and it's the birthday day and you didn't know it was Joy's birthday, then how are you going to know to wish her a happy birthday? And maybe that's all it is, but maybe people bring gifts, or maybe I know not during the pandemic, but maybe you have a potluck. Nobody's having potlucks right now, or maybe you are expected to bring a card. Well, make sure that you know those kind of things and can pass that on to your intern. Or maybe your manager likes to be contacted by text and not email, or vice versa. So find those little things out that can really help your intern be successful. And then, are there any non-related work activities that your student is expected to participate in? Maybe there's an online group chat, or maybe they do something special once or twice a year that your intern is expected to participate in. And then do you have to get him prepared for that? So just think about those kind of things that might be helpful to you and your intern to know when you're thinking about internships. So as you can see, there's just so much to learn. And then a couple more things on the boundary spanning. So if you're questioning your host business, here's a few more things that you can find out. Ask them how they would describe their ideal employee. My guess is that employability skills are right up there, and that helps you to know how you want to prep your intern. And then again, certifications. Do they want disability awareness training that you can present to them? And then do the managers and mentors have any connections in that industry sector? Did they come from another hospital? Did they come from another store? Do they belong to an association that could help you network with other community employers? So those kind of things are also boundary spanning. And then if they can introduce you to somebody in that industry sector, are there frequent open jobs? Are there times of year when hiring is critical? What do employers identify as being really, really important to that job opening? Are there growth areas in the economy and in your area? So is there another big store moving in? Is there another, have you heard about a new company coming in, and what kind of company is it and what do they do? And is it related to the skill set that your student is learning? Again, are there external certifications that they should get or could get? This morning, I heard from one of our hospitals in Michigan that everybody was being elevated to $15 an hour. Wow, that seemed like a fabulous opportunity. So, but do they have to do something to get that wage? And then are there professional associations that maybe you could learn, that you could belong to, that would help you, or that the students might need to belong to? So could that help you learn more about that particular department or industry sector? So again, all kinds of things to think about as you're developing those internships and teaching skills that are going to lead to jobs. All right, we talked about the Just Right Challenge a little bit. Again, the Just Right Challenge is kind of like skill layering. It's thinking about what is that next challenge that stretches that young person, that you want to help that individual move to the next level. So when you think about, I think about on your tippy toes, kind of stretching to that next task, or going from the basic to the intermediate, or the intermediate to the advanced. We always want to be challenging our students. We don't want them to kind of rest on that mediocrity. Here's a picture of Eric. You saw a picture of Eric earlier, and I actually took this picture and asked him to stand on his tippy toes to get this picture, because I want you to think about stretching and what are their current level, and then how do I get them to the next level? All right, so here's about Voc Fit. So do you remember the slide a few slides ago when we looked at this, at these colors, right? Green means strengths. Yellow means emerging skills or areas where I can do more teaching. And yellow and red means needs. So when I go back here now, so green means they already have these strengths and they already can do certain things independently, which is great because you can't spend all your time teaching because you've got to rotate through all your students. So we always want to start from strengths. What can they already do? And add that to your task list, because it's nice to have some tasks that they feel comfortable with and they can do already. And then you want to add those tasks that are emerging, or those skills that are just starting to peak out. You want to add those. Those are that's your layering. Now I'm going to teach this that is just starting. And then continue to add tasks that might be more and more challenging. So during that internship, during that 5 weeks, what are things that you're going to add? And then this final level is that kind of red. Red doesn't mean no, it just means they're going to need more support and more work on those skills, maybe during the internship and maybe outside the internship, to master those skills. And a skill in this red area might take the whole internship to learn. And maybe they don't even master it during those 10 weeks. Maybe they just are exposed to it. Hopefully these yellow skills will turn green, and maybe even these orange skills will move up into the yellow area. And maybe you won't, maybe everything won't be green and yellow, but that's okay. Even when we think about our current skills, we're not all, everything isn't a strength. We're constantly learning new things. And always keep in mind employment. So how can we focus on the tasks and the skills that they need to learn to transfer, if you will, to transfer those skills into an employment situation? So what can they learn in this department that's going to carry them over to the next thing, or the next job, or maybe the next internship department, whatever. So we talked about a training matrix at the very beginning of this training. So a training matrix can look something like this. At its very basic, it's a spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet or a table of skills. And these are kind of administrative skills, but it doesn't have to be. It could be cleaning skills. It could be admin skills. It could be patient skills. It could be anything. But typically they're kind of lumped together in an area. So these are admin skills for, I don't know, whatever department that it might be. It could be human resources. It could be it could be a clinic. So in this one, here are my interns. So here are my names, knowing that all of them need these basic skills or core skills, as we talked about earlier. They need to know how to file, both alphabetically and chronologically. They need to learn how to use the copier and fax and scan. They might have to do some data entry, and maybe everybody still needs to know first aid. So this tool can be something generic that everybody in that department, or even in your whole project search program, needs to learn. And this can be something that you keep observable in the classroom, so that everybody can kind of look and celebrate when they get there. Or it can be more private, that you're only going to pull out at employment planning meetings and talk about progress. But either way, this can be kind of a more general tool than the big form we were showing a minute ago, that I can just kind of check off. Okay, they've got this skill, and they're moving on. We are not promoting this as much as the other form, but I like this because it's a good general tool that I can kind of constantly look at and see where my whole class is at once, in terms of kind of that bigger, broader scope of skills. Okay. We're doing great. So this is Sarah. Her name's Sarah Kays. She was in our very first class at Cincinnati Children's. Some of you might have heard me talk about Sarah before, but in terms of Sarah's story, she was at Fifth Third Bank, which is it's the largest bank in Cincinnati, and it's a large regional bank. So they go all the way down to Florida. I don't know if there's any Fifth Thirds in South Carolina. I know there are a couple in North Carolina. But when I think about, Aaron always says it shouldn't be the easiest tasks, but we should be allowing our interns to learn complex and systematic tasks. So when I think about Sarah, that's exactly what we did. So her very first internship was all about communication, practicing interacting with people at the bank, inside the bank, outside the bank. But it was still very protected in a way, because she was in just one department. Her second internship was in a very public lobby where people came in and out, and she was badging them in. She was creating pictures that people wore to be able to walk around the bank for visitors. She problem solved when people came into the wrong area or didn't know where they were going. She did some faxing and scanning. She worked a switchboard. She did all kinds of different tasks. Her third internship was in human resources, where she was able to interact with other HR professionals and generalists and support them in their work, etc. And then she got hired into that last position. So we purposefully layered her, not just her tasks, but her internships into more and more difficult areas so that she was doing more complex skills, but yet they were very systematic and led to a great job where she still is working today. So just thinking about that layering process and going from easy to more complex is really, really important. All right. So this next piece that we'll do for the next 15 minutes or so before we end are some common scenarios based on when departments say to you, we don't really want to have an internship. And then we're going to discuss each scenario and then responses from our team about how do you convince a hesitant department that project search is a great idea and that they want to do it. So maybe you've run into some of these scenarios before. So we're going to look at them together, and then I really need your help in discussing these. So the first one is, and maybe you've heard this before. So you go and talk to a manager and you're really, really hoping that they'll say yes and that they'll have a, that they would host an intern. So they say back, we're excited to have an intern. Yes, of course we would like to have an intern. We talked as a team about how they could help us, and we came up with a list that includes cleaning, shredding, and stuffing envelopes. What would you do? What would you say to that?
I mean, Susie, I cheated and I printed it that had all your answers here, but on here it says like saying that's a really great start, you know, as most employers will need to know how to do these things. What do we find that is that interns work faster and more productively than we expect. Perhaps we could come in and look at what you do as a department to see if there are other tasks that the intern could do to support your team.
Right. So you don't want to say no, right? And you don't want to like tick them off to start with and say, well, that's stupid. But because everybody does know how to, needs to learn how to clean, and all those things are important. But again, ask if you can come stand in the circle, ask if you can have more exposure to that department. And sometimes you might just have to suck it up and say, okay, we'll start there, but can we, as Diane or Marquita or whoever your interns are, as they're in your department, we're going to be looking at new things. And, you know, Karen, when you talked about zoning, I'm still thinking about what the heck is zoning. But, you know, maybe that was a second thing that you learned or a third thing that you learned. So it's this delicate balance between poo-pooing an idea because it seems beneath your interns and being thankful for the opportunity. So we always want to challenge our students, and we want to challenge the organization to learn more about people with disabilities and their opportunities and their abilities. But at the same time, we can't always just say, well, no, we're not going to do that. So again, kind of creating that balance of, okay, we'll do some of that scut work, but we also want opportunities to learn new things, and maybe not quite in that, maybe not quite that way. All right. Thanks, Diane. I'm glad you cheated. Very happy that you did that. So again, Diane just kind of gave these ideas. The other thing that you could do is you could always say, so shredding, for instance, shredding is like the most boring task in the world, but it has to be done, right? And especially when I think about hospitals, they probably shred all kinds of stuff. So you could say, hey, could we do some shredding for you every Friday afternoon? And that'll be kind of our give back to you as an organization. Or remember when I talked about the department that was really slow on Fridays? Great. We need something to do on Fridays. So how about on Fridays, we come for 2 hours in the afternoon and 2 of our students will shred. So now you've created this compromise that you're still going to do what they need, but you're not going to do it every day. And it's going to be more of a thank you to them, an appreciation to them for letting us be there. All right, what about scenario 2? You say, hey, could we have an internship in your department? And they say back, hey, so sorry, we don't have any open positions. Might have to pick on Diane to cheat again.
I didn't know if you wanted me to. I mean, I can if you want me to.
Anybody else? What would you say if they say to you, we don't have any open positions?
This is Wendy from Columbia, from Richland too. I think one thing that I would point out to them is we completely understand that, but there's still a lot of skills that can transfer to other jobs that we can learn in your area. And we just want to give them a chance to come in and learn. And we understand, you know, the hospital can't hire every intern, but every intern can learn at the hospital.
Absolutely. Yes, Wendy, you are right on the money. And we're not really asking for jobs. So reassure them quickly that, great, we understand that you don't have any, but as Wendy said, you have tons of skills that we could learn, and your department is so important and it presents all these really great things. So how can we, when can we start in your department? And we understand that there's no jobs.
You can even maybe emphasize that that's a good thing, because that means there's more people that your students can learn from and observe that there's not pieces that aren't being done right now.
Jenny, what a great, I hadn't thought, my brain hadn't gone there. Right. Absolutely. All these people that can become mentors and teachers and skills to be learned. Yep. Anything else?
I mean, on here, they said it's worth mentioning job matching. So you would put an intern in who we would think would really thrive in that department, that would do really well in that department.
Yep. Yes, all those things are so important. Okay. Oh, I just want to point out when Jenny said, I think it was Jenny that said, you know, there's a lot of skills in your department. And again, reinforce to them that would help make them a great employee outside of here. We're not asking you to hire everybody. We're not looking to fill a position. And then again, you can always, you know, fall back on that Department of Labor. Our interns are not able to replace an employee. We're not here for that. All right, scenario 3. Hey, we did our part. We hired a graduate. We can't take any more interns this year. What would you say to that?
Again, I think you can still use some of the answers you used in number 2. And then we also find that when we place people where they think they don't need help, like for example, I'll use a restaurant. And a lot of times the tedious jobs of rolling silverware or whatever, you know, you can have someone, you know, I know that's a really bad example, but, you know, I think again, they could learn some skills, even if they do have a intern. I would go back with number 2. We're not looking to hire anyone. We just need them to learn those skills.
I think adding on that is looking at, hey, it might be a really great opportunity for the intern to teach and refine their skills with this new person. And we can reinforce different skills with the intern you already hired and have them be a model, which is so wonderful for individuals with disabilities to see other people with disabilities and jobs that they get.
That's a really great point, Jennifer. I love that. I mean, and it's so cool when you see the graduates teaching the new interns. It's one of my absolute favorite things. It's like, well, I'm the trainer now. You know, it's just, it makes your heart sing. So yes. Okay. So again, so pleased that you hired somebody. It shows you value the great work that interns can achieve. And again, it's a great opportunity, exactly what Jen said about for the graduate employee to mentor the new intern. All right, scenario 4. hey, you know, it's a really busy time right now. We've got some important projects coming up. So sorry, we won't be able to take an intern. Or they might say, if you're in a hospital, you know, we're making updates to Epic. We just can't have an intern right now. Or we've got a construction project going on. We just can't take an intern right now. What might you say to that?
I mean, they're setting themselves up again. Well, it sounds like you're really busy. So it's a perfect opportunity for us to take some weight off your plate, do some of those skills and have someone help you out.
Exactly.
I think a unique opportunity too, because the individual who has that internship has to work around those different unique scenarios as well of construction or new things, and has to like have the uneasiness that everyone else is having, which will make them an even better employee in the future.
Mhm.
Yeah, talk about problem solving opportunities. Wow. And just overall, like you said, help. And they might discover some kind of new fun things that the interns can do that you might not have discovered otherwise. And just, again, navigation skills. If there's a construction project going on, having to learn new ways to get around or get to the department or get out of the department. Just really fabulous learning opportunities. Because when do we learn best? Like when new things are happening, right? Instead of routine. I took a walk the other night with my walking partner, and she goes, "Let's go backwards." And I'm like, "Backwards? I can't go backwards." This is the way we usually go. To really think about that. All right. So again, more skill building opportunities and not less, right? More movement of patients. Maybe we could learn to teach the interns to transport patients. How can we support you meet these deadlines that you might have now? Things are new demand tasks are your staff. We could help free up your team. All right. Scenario 5. So sorry, we've already chosen the departments in their housekeeping, cafeteria, and mailroom. Those managers will be coming to your presentation this afternoon. And then just a few other things that sometimes people talk about is, well, the manager's a Grinch and we don't want to go there. So, you know, sometimes people change. Just having an intern sometimes makes them get more excited about it. And invite those people that were kind of crabby or didn't seem like they were excited, invite them to information sessions, invite them to graduation, invite them to places where they might learn to have a different response or maybe get excited. And then here's some other things that they might say to you. Our work is really complicated. So sorry, we don't have any easy work. Well, we're not about easy work. We're about complex work. We have 2 people out on medical leave. Is it possible to have 2 interns cover their work? Well, we know the answer is no, right? We can't do that, but we can support work of the people that are there. We have several positions open, so we can't spare time. Well, you don't need to teach everything. We have staff that can do that. Oh, I don't know how my customers might react to people with disabilities. So again, just all these kind of things to think about.